Jobs to be done is very often seen as a product innovation framework for designers and developers and things like that. But it's actually much broader than that. It can apply to anybody in the organization, right? It's really about understanding your market in a new way. And the thing that's important for us, I believe, is that jobs to be done makes being customer centric very tangible, right? It's not just this fuzzy term, hey, be more customer centric. It actually gives us targets and things to talk about. And that's what we're going to unpack today on Jobs to be Done Untangled with me, Jim Kalbach, the author of the Jobs to be Done playbook and co-founder of the Jobs to be Done toolkit.
And hi, everyone. I'm Elaine Mathias. I'm also the other co-founder of the Jobs to be Done toolkit. We are here as a resource for putting jobs to be done into action in your day-to-day work. And we have, a handful of different resources that I'll go over really quickly to help you do that. So we have a mini course coming up, applying the core process. This is our last one for 2025. It's really conveniently timed Monday, Wednesday, and Friday over lunch from 11 a.m. to 1 p.m. Eastern time. So that works well across a number of different time zones. We also have a video learning program, Foundations of Jobs to be Done, which is a really great way to get up and running with jobs to be done. It also comes with a lot of tools and other resources packed in that we talk about in the videos. And then Jim offers team coaching. So you can go to this URL if you want to have Jim kind of come in, audit the work you're doing, provide some expert guidance on jobs to be done. We found that's a really great resource for helping teams. And then lastly, our next Jobs to be Done Untangled will be on the last Tuesday of October. So we hope you can join us again then. Keep an eye out for those links in your email. Also, really quickly, I will be keeping an eye on questions in the chat. So if anybody has any questions or you want to engage in conversation, the chat is open and it's a great resource during the next hour as well.
Yep. Yeah, I wish people would contact me more, Elaine, actually.
I know, right? Same. I love it. Even when people reach out, just like, hey, take a look at this.
I know.
Come talk to us.
Right, exactly.
We're knee-deep in
But
jobs to be
let's move
done.
on to our main topic today. We have a very special guest with us, Ellie Wu. She's going to be talking about the relationship of jobs to be done and the field of customer success, because she is an expert in customer success and has done a lot of advising in the field. Hello, Ellie. Thanks for being with us.
Thanks so much. Really glad to be here with you all.
Oh.
And I'm not able to see the poll, but I am very
yeah.
curious about where we ended up with our audience today as far as,
Yeah,
the mix of folks. And it looks like we might still have a couple folks in the waiting room.
Yeah, I think they're coming in. I actually didn't launch the poll, so thanks for that reminder. Polls, here we go. Oh, did we launch? You launched the poll?
I have not launched the poll.
Huh.
Oh, I thought I saw something when I came in, but maybe that was just for me, and then we were flipping things around.
People did.
Oh, great. Ellie said it did.
Actually, let me see if I end it. I think you
Oh,
can,
here we go. I see
something
something pop up. All right. So it looks like we've got about 14% from product design, 14% from product management, 21% from customer success. We got a few, and then 7% from sales and 7% from marketing.
Yeah.
So that's pretty cool. So share results. So
that's great for us, because we usually don't get that many sales and customer success, right? So I'm glad to see so many customer success folks here. Because as you know, Ellie, I used to head up the customer success team at Mural, the company that I work for about 5 years. So customer success is near and dear to my heart. And when we first met, you're this customer success advisor. It was just great for me to talk about jobs to be done and customer success. And of course, we put a guide together, which you're going to talk about. But you also have a presentation. And before we get into that, why don't you introduce yourself and tell folks about C-Suite CX?
Yes. Well, hi, everyone. I'm Ellie Wu. I'm the founder of C-Suite CX. Thrilled to be here with you all for Jobs to be Done Untangled. Quick context. So in my work, I work with founders and executive teams, and I've seen how jobs to be done can be treated as a research method for product, and viable, yes, but limited. And so I'm excited today to really come in and talk about how this can be used as a shared language across the whole company, because a lot of the work I do is centered around how to help founders and executive teams unlock growth through customers so that it is more defensible and durable, especially during high volatility times. And well, it seems like we've been in that for a minute, and we are probably still going to be going through that at least for the foreseeable future. So
Yeah.
happy to give the group one more tool to help
Yeah.
navigate these interesting times.
Yeah, that's great. And I see your link to LinkedIn in the chat there. Thanks for that, Elaine. I'm going to switch over to your presentation then. Is that okay, Ellie?
Yeah, that sounds good.
Okay, let me just do that for
Yeah,
folks.
so as you're doing that, I mentioned about this being a shared language across the whole company. And why this is especially important is because it gives us a way to bring it all the way across the executive and board level. And so what we'll be talking about today is why that shift matters, what it looks like in practice, and how you can apply it in your org starting today. Now, I don't know if we'll have a way to pull up another poll, so feel free to just drop it in the chat if that's easier. Jim, if you want to flip to the next slide,
Okay.
I'm curious about folks on the, in the room.
Yeah.
What's the biggest job conflict you're having right now? Is it around defining the job your customers are tackling, getting your teams aligned? Is it measuring progress or really communicating impact to the board? And we're going to be
Right.
using some of this to tailor the discussion as we move through things later today.
Yeah.
We've got a good chunk of time today. The way that I have this plan structured is I'm going to be speaking for about 15, 20 minutes and make sure I leave time for a Q&A.
Yeah, that's a good point. And if you have a question for Ellie or for us along the way, put it in the chat. We'll be gathering those as we go. And then after the presentation, it's an open discussion as usual here on Jobs to Be Done Untangled. Martha says all of the above. Otherwise, Ellie, it looks like we're getting a pretty good mix. Alignment, measuring progress are up there, and then communicating to the board, and then all of the
Okay.
above. So we're getting a
All
mix
right.
across here. Yeah.
So sounds like a little bit of everything. So these are very common questions or common pains I'm hearing from folks. So let's get right into it.
Okay.
And yes, so these are quotes, that you may have heard from customers where they're like, "Hey, we're logging in all the time, but I can't really tell like if things are going well or if we're winning." And then from the board side, they're like, "Okay, that's great. I see your customers are doing stuff, but I don't know if they're actually going to stay." And so what this actually shows is you've got two voices reflecting the same gap. And what Jobs to Be Done helps you do is bridge that gap by turning customer progress into outcomes that leadership and boards understand and actually care about. So, in our time together today, we're going to talk about how you flip adoption metrics into progress signals and then do an abbreviated walkthrough of the Jobs to Be Done canvas and how that can be applied in customer success. And then also talk through two quick examples of how you can actually start testing this immediately. And Jim and I published the guide that goes into a lot more detail because there's only so much we can do in 15 or so minutes. So we put a lot of detail into the guide that goes through and guides you through step by step how you actually do this.
Yeah.
All right. And so if you look at what we have here, in the before state, adoption is equated with success. And this is where teams are measuring logins, clicks, and usage. But none of that actually proves customers are making progress. And then in the after state, progress becomes that shared definition of success across sales, customer success, product, even RevOps. And that's the power of Jobs to Be Done because it gives you one language for measuring success. An example of this is I was actually on a call just yesterday and the team was really struggling with, okay, we're trying to figure out how to re-tier our customers, but how do we actually do this? Because I'm not so sure. I was talking to my peer. They actually just gave me the heads up. I'm probably not going to get the resourcing I thought I was when they told me I was joining. That's a story I think many people have heard before. Now, what do I do? Okay, well, do more with what you have. Sounds familiar, but also it sounds like something that you put on a towel, but doesn't always work out in real life. So, what next? Okay, why not get more leverage from whatever you're doing? That's where Jobs to Be Done comes into place. So, what we actually did was took a look at what's on the website. What are they actually telling customers are the solutions? Like, why would you buy us? Does that even line up to what sales is saying? And so we started lining up some of the pieces together so that some of sales initiatives and marketing's initiatives could actually line up to some of the post-sales initiatives so that when they're putting together their success plans, which we're actually not calling success plans because there's a internal, let's call it an allergic reaction to building a success plan. So we're calling it something else. We haven't landed on a name yet, but this is kind of what we're working around is like, how do you actually build a shared definition of success across multiple teams? And that's the power of job to be done. So then when you pull that forward, it allows you to deliver impact so that you help the board start seeing the leading signals and not just the lagging churn or renewal numbers. And when customers start demonstrating progress, you're able to then tie that directly to enterprise value, renewals, and expansion. And so where you're seeing most CS teams still live, it's unfortunately in the before column where they're chasing adoption. And boards are viewing that a lot as rear view mirror metrics. And so what they actually want to know is, are customers making progress? Will they renew? Will they expand? And so if you take a minute and take a look at this slide, where would you put your teams today? Would they still mostly be in the before box, or are they starting to move towards the after box? I'm actually quite curious and would love to see what people might put into the chat. And don't worry, we won't share this back to your orgs.
Before-ish. Yeah, we're more before-ish, I put. Stephanie. Yeah. So mostly before. Seeing a lot of befores there.
I saw one afterish, but I'm also not surprised because I know that person and I know that they maniacally push their teams to afterish even if they have to pull them on their backs.
Yeah. But that's typical though, Ellie, and I think that's kind of, particularly customer success. That's what it's targeting, right? So it makes sense that people would say that.
Yes. So then that brings us to, okay, why might that be that so many people are still in that before-ish state? So let's take a look at that in the next slide. I call this the three traps. These are three traps that I see often holding teams back. It's mistaking adoption for progress, running these siloed playbooks, and chasing the lagging metrics. These are common because they're easy, but they're also very expensive. And when I'm advising companies, which I've advised hundreds of companies at this point across all growth stages and market conditions, these traps showed up everywhere. And the companies that actually were able to escape them use some sort of shared framework for customer progress. And hey, if it's not like broken, why fix it? I think that's the adage. Jobs to be done is a fantastic tool to use that as a shared framework. And so also curious to see if folks would drop a 1, 2, or 3 if they've seen some of these familiar traps or if this feels familiar right now.
So 1, 2, 3.
Yeah, like I've seen one of these, 2 of these, 3 of these. Like this is the trifecta that I am living right now. Yeah, the mistaking adoption for progress, the siloed playbooks, and chasing the lagging metrics.
All right.
I feel a little bit like I'm at the dentist, when they're measuring your pockets, you're like 2, 3, 2.
Oh, right. Yeah, exactly. 2, 2, 3.
Yep.
2.
Well, yes. And so you all are not alone. This is something that's unfortunately very common, but at least like we're starting to unpack like, okay, like the before-ish piece, why does that happen? So what can we do about it? Let's actually bring the canvas to life with a CS scenario. Now, you'll notice we're not walking through the whole canvas because I promised we're going to save time for Q&A. And so we're doing an abbreviated walkthrough. And we're going to do this with a light CS scenario. And so we're going to walk through this pretty quickly. And we're going to look at this from just from who's doing this, what are they doing, what's the struggle they're facing, and what's the signal we're looking out for. So in a few minutes, we're going to be able to move through this. All right. So in this example, we're going to have a new admin be our who. So this new admin is going to be trying to set up a team permissions. So as they're bringing new people on, they're like, I need to set up these new permissions. And so that's what they're trying to do. The struggle they run into or the challenges they're going to be running into are the roles are confusing and they don't want to break anyone's access, right? The worst thing is you lock somebody out and then they're coming back to you and saying like, I'm just trying to do my job. What'd you do? And so no admin wants to be in that position. Then the signal of like, hey, when are things going well is, okay, I'm able to actually bring new team members on without any errors, without any issues. So when you think about how we're able to do this, you're actually then moving from adoption metrics to say, okay, how many times is an admin logging in, to then bring it forward to say, okay, let's look for the signals that ties to the outcomes. Because the struggle they're most facing are being, wanting to make sure that I'm working through these confusing roles. I don't want to break anyone's access, and I'm able to onboard my team members without any errors. The signal I'm looking for is making sure I'm onboarding people without any errors. And this is just one example that, you can go into the guide and we have more detailed examples, but you'll see how you can take a messy struggle and turn it into a clean board ready signal, because that's about making sure that you're translating your customer's job into a world of where it's able to be a language that different people in your organization can understand and then lock into, to be able to understand, well, what do I then need to do to meet them where they are to help move them forward? So the jobs to be done canvas helps us capture the customer struggle, the progress signal, and what success looks like. So if you click through the next few slides, this should then fill itself out.
Gotcha. So new admin, setting up team permissions, confused about roles, first team member onboarded successfully. Okay.
Yes. Now, this helps us capture this customer struggle and the signal and what success looks like. But the canvas is actually just the starting point. If we want to talk about where the real power comes in, it's when you're able to then connect that customer's job all the way up to the boardroom. So now let's take how this single job, like an admin setting up a role, can cascade through signals, or can cascade through interventions and signals to become metrics your board actually cares about. So if we flip into the next slide, this is what I call the causal chain. And so if you think about how this same job can then translate into board outcomes, we've got the same focus job where we've got the admin wanting to enable the team to work independently and get set up in their roles. The intervention here is they've got that checklist and the peer review to get everything all ready to go. The signals is being able to confidently set up that role without breaking anything and then to hand things off. And then this is where you're tying it over to the board metric to say, okay, what does the board actually care about? So the more confident my admin is, the faster they're able to get to their first time to value, right? The faster they're able to get to the job they're trying to do. And then it also then is more likely that they're going to drive retention. So GRR right now is the metric I am hearing more often, finally, than anything else from board members. Part of that is because when it comes to enterprise value, the biggest bang for your buck, especially as it relates to compounding, is tied to that metric of GRR. And so as you're looking for different ways of how do I cascade this all the way through, this is one additional tool you can leverage. And so that way you're not just showing adoption dashboards, you're actually showing leading indicators. Thank you, Elaine. Leading indicators of pipelines for growth. And so you can absolutely use this with your own teams. And that's a full chain from a single customer job all the way to the metrics that can move the board. But I know not every team has the time or space to map all of this out right away. And so where I want to take us next is to share 2 quick practical examples of where you can start small and see impact quickly. So that way you can focus on building momentum, because especially in tough times, momentum can actually be a difference between survival and maybe not living to fight another day kind of thing. So let's also look at quick wins. All right, so think of these as quick wins you can take back to your team today, this week. And this applies in 2 different contexts. We've got the onboarding admin where the challenge is confusing roles, signal is error-free setup, impact is smoother team handoffs, right? We've basically taken that first example, slimmed it all the way down just to focus on these 3 pieces. If I take a different context and look at customer adoption, the challenge would be, I've got high logins, but no progress, okay, what's the signal I'm then looking for? The signal here is then let's look for a first workflow that's completed. So that way the impact is then faster time to value. Again, you're tying it all the way back to something where it's showing actual impact. So it's different context, same pattern, where you're looking at the jobs to be done, the signal, and then the impact.
Nope.
All right. And so if you want to go deeper, that's exactly why Jim and I created the Jobs to be Done guide, the Jobs to be Done for CS guide. And inside you'll find jobs map, tips, design ideas. You can put it into practice right away. The link is in the chat, and so you can grab your copy. And we built the guide to try to make it as simple as possible for you to pick up this language and start using it in your own organization. If you want to go even deeper, there's courses, that you can take through the Jobs to be Done toolkit group. And with that, I'll hand it back
Well,
to Jim.
thanks for that. That's great. Oh, and they can also reach out to me. I was just complaining that people don't reach out to me. But
Yes.
I love
to take
that.
us into the Q&A. Yes.
There you go. I love tying the top and the bottom together, right? Because in organizations that I've worked with and for, right, there's very often a disconnect. Right. There's high level aspirations that the board and leaders have, and then people are doing things down here and they're not necessarily tied together. And I really love the way that you tied those together through this lens of progress and progress signals. And by the way, I think you should trademark that, progress signals. I love that. What do you guys think on the call? Progress signals is a way to measure the effectiveness through the Jobs to be Done lens. Yeah, absolutely love that, Stephanie, too. So thanks for that, Ellie. I appreciate those insights. I had a quick story that I wanted to tell you, just to bring home this. Metrics don't necessarily mean progress. I was working here at Mural. This was a very long time ago, maybe even 10 years ago, 9 years ago, and we were looking at an account. I can't remember the account at this point in time, and there was this user that was off the chart. Like her metrics were off the chart. She created the most murals. You moved the most sticky notes around, right? We got to know this person because they're a super user. We called her. It turns out after we called her up, somebody had accidentally deleted an entire workshop, all the sticky notes from her canvas, and she had to go back in and recreate it. Right. So by the time we got to her, she was already frustrated with Mural, and she's like, no, I don't love you guys so much that I'm using you all day long. I had to keep logging in and add sticky notes because we didn't have a recover feature. We do have a recover feature now, everybody. If you lose something in Mural, you can hit a recover button. But the point was, we had these metrics that made us think, oh, this must be somebody making progress, but it was the exact opposite. We actually inflicted pain on them. Right. So those signals are not indications of progress, right?
Yes, I have a similar story where I reached out to a CSM for a tool we're using. I was highly frustrated and I wanted to help them be better. And the CSM got on the call, lovely person. And they said, I'm surprised you called. And I said, oh, why? I was surprised I got your email. And I said, why? They said, oh, because you showed up green in our system. And I said, we need to talk about your health scoring because something seems off. Yeah.
Right. Yeah.
So I saw a lot of chats going on. So that's
there's
definitely
a lot of
encouraging.
questions and topics here. And I know Elaine is really good at paying attention there. I was driving the slides. What do you think, Elaine? Were there questions or points that we should dive into here with the group?
I think Wolfram had a really good point. He's sort of made the most significant comments so far about why these measurements are the way they are. Wolfram, do you want to restate your comment, and maybe we can talk a little bit with the group about some of the experiences around why we're measuring things that maybe don't indicate what they think they are?
Yeah, and we can also stop the slide sharing now that we're done with the slides, so that way I can see everyone better.
Okay.
Yeah, sure. So I'm just wondering every time that companies, including my one, invest a lot of money in marketing around keeping customers and winning them back when they left, instead of investing the money in doing it right up front, like Jobs to be Done, research, stuff like this, because then we wouldn't need to spend or waste money to win them back. They just stay with us because they can get the job done with us better. So that's just what I'm wondering always. when it's about budgets, right? Maybe you guys can relate to that.
Yes, that's a great question. And it likely goes back to some of the siloed components of what different folks are measuring. And so if you think about the way that budget cycles can happen, and it varies very much from company to company, it's we may start seeing some of that shift, right? Because I am seeing, and happy to have anybody else weigh in here as well, but from what I am seeing, when it comes to where budgets are going, at least recently, and going into 2026 with 2026 planning, marketing is definitely getting hit a lot harder than customer success. Marketing teams are getting cut way down, if not cut altogether, where I'm not seeing the same conversations with customer success. The outbound motion, right? They're basically saying, okay, well, to find customers, let's move that over to sales, right? And then they're skinning the marketing team way down because now they're realizing the impacts of retention. I think during the days of growth at all costs, where it was easier to raise money and you were driving that growth number, and there was a lot of pressure to grow at a certain X per year, that's why you would see a lot more pressure on sales and marketing to get new logos, because there was the growth on that side. Because there's a rule of 40 number that investors will look at, and that's how they look at the valuation of a company. And so if that, because there's either growth or profitability, those are the two levers that they're pulling. And so for, up until probably halfway through 2021, it was heavily weighted on the growth side. Like, let's just go as fast as we can. Let's not worry about the brakes kind of thing. Like, let's just go. And about halfway through 2021, going into 2022, where all of the funding started shifting, and especially now, a lot of that is changing, where it's becoming a lot more, let's look at the margins, let's look at what it actually takes to keep the customers. And so I do see a lot of that shifting, where let's make sure that we're being smarter with our dollars. What does it actually take to keep our customers? And I don't think that the same approach is being taken as much. It's not growth at all costs anymore. It is much more responsible growth now.
I just want to deepen on Wolfram's position there, because he's a product guy. I have a product background as well. And we see PLG, right? Product-led growth. And you just talked about levers for growth, but you didn't mention product as a lever for growth. And Wolfram knows very, very well, you can change customer behavior and you can persuade people to take certain actions towards progress through the product, right? So why aren't we seeing more product-led growth, or thinking about how can we retain customers by actually delivering the value that they need, i.e. get their job done through the experience? We don't even have to say the word product, because we can say the word experience. And Ellie, I actually consider customer success as part of the experience, right?
Yes.
If you have, and that's how I always approach customer experience. For me, it wasn't about just looking at metrics. I was part of the experience that you got when you signed up for Mural, for instance, right? It's part of that experience.
Yeah.
So why don't we see experience-led growth more as a growth lever? Because you just mentioned two levers, but you didn't say it's in there. So I'm sorry, I don't want to put words in your mouth, but that's kind of where my mind went when he asked his question.
Yeah, no, I appreciate you pushing it that way.
Yeah.
So this is where I'm going to venture into more theory and reading the tea leaves a little bit, right? If we think about the average tenure of an executive in SaaS, it's 12 to 18 months. If we think about truly changing a product to the point where it can affect the experience, that timeline is much longer. And so if you think about the pressure from a board meeting or a board cycle, that's much shorter. And so if you think about the levers people are going to pull first, because if a CEO or any of the people in the C-suite are going to potentially have their jobs at risk, do they have the timeline of waiting for the product to make the changes, to make the turn, to then cascade into showing the downstream impact, to then really fix things down the road? Or do they need to pull the levers that show impact sooner, right? And so I think that's why you may not hear the discussions as much. These things all need to happen in parallel, where you're making investments together. But the ones that you hear about more may be the ones with the shorter timelines and shorter windows, partially because it's the product investments are usually more expensive and take, like when I say expensive, I mean dollar wise and time wise.
Yeah. For me, that's the definition and the cause of this marketplace disruption, right? But also, you mentioned durable growth at the beginning too, and I would argue that investing in experience is durable growth. And part of the problem with these short cycles and short executives is that then you're just working on the surface to manage those numbers and not actually providing the value that's durable.
And this is why we are friends, Jim. Like this is 100% like I don't disagree. And when I am in conversations, it is several things, right? I am trying to help executive teams find the short-term wins, right? Like what levers can we pull in the short term? And how do we also make sure that we're looking at this through the human lens, right? The human infrastructure, because the other thing that's up for grabs nowadays that wasn't always as much at risk before, we talk about the challenges with product, the employee experience or the human infrastructure, the human interface, your customer API, like the human side of it, that's also now at risk because of all the conversations about, can AI just do that? Can I just replace this person with AI? Like that's the other piece where I'm walking a lot of executives back from the edge to be like, well, hold on a second. That's not necessarily ready yet, but here you can test it here, right? And so there's where you can pull the short-term levers, and then like let's also make sure we're not pulling things where it's high risk, low return, right, with the humans. And then let's also make sure we are building forward when it comes to product. So it is very much multifaceted. And so when I look at an organization for durable growth, it is a little bit like solving a Rubik's Cube, because if you're only solving for one side, you could really be causing painful issues down the road.
That's right.
That, yeah, maybe you're gone by the time those issues show up, but it is still your responsibility, or somebody else is in that room, likely their responsibility. And yeah, that's.
I would argue too, and it came out in your presentation, that using jobs to be done as a common language across the organization, right? That's how we opened it up. It actually brings those disparate functions closer together, right? If CS and sales and marketing are using jobs to be done language, and if, Wolfram's team is using jobs to be done for the product, you actually start to bring those closer. And then, hopefully also the investment and the attention is also a lot closer together as well. So that's my ultimate hope of jobs to be done, is that it does provide a common framework and a common language to start to bridge those gaps, because we all know that those silos and those incentives and the investments are very separate in a lot of organizations. Not always, but sometimes.
Yes, yeah. And Wolfram also posted another question. That's a much bigger question. That's yeah.
I also sort of had this question. Do you have any instances where you can kind of reference being in that room and experiencing those conversations, or trying to make that case, or even being on the other side of it and having somebody come to you and watching them make the case as an executive yourself?
Yes, while I have been in the room, I haven't been in a position to affect CEO compensation yet. I hope to be in that position one day, Wolfram, but not yet. I do think that there are a lot of competing forces with how standard compensation structure is today, for CEOs across not just just across so many industries. But when we think about how to influence what we can, right? I do think that jobs to be done is a good place to start, because it is asking the question of, is there any reason not to do it this way? Right? Like, why not actually map it to what our customers are trying to do? What are we doing instead that is better than this today? That's usually how I find it to be more effective, is to say, okay, well, what are we doing today that's better than this? And when you start posing it that way, it is from a place of curiosity. It's, well, so is there any reason we shouldn't try this? And the other piece is, sometimes people think it has to be this huge exercise, or we got to do this all across. You often can find a small cohort. Sometimes I call them misfits. We're just curious people that are also interested to say like, well, what could this look like if I did it in this portion of my customers? Because if I can just explore and test there, then that might engender enough curiosity in other parts of the organization that they're like, whoa, what's going on over there? Like, how are they getting those results? And if you've got like the winning vibes over here, people may not necessarily care like if I call it jobs to be done, or if I call it just like winning Wednesday, or if I call it whatever, right?
Mhm.
They're like, I just want whatever that is because it seems like it's fun. It seems like it works. It seems like it makes my life easier. It seems like it makes my customers happier, right? And so that's, I always think about what's what's the best way for us to, you know, does it have to always feel so confrontational?
Yeah.
Maybe,
Yeah.
maybe not. Interesting.
Right.
So if you wouldn't
I-
call it jobs to be done, I'd use a term. Let me see what it says in the chat. They'd understand.
Yeah,
Yeah,
I'm all
I,
for
I
white
agree.
labeling things too. Yeah, like we even advocate that, call it a problem to be solved, call it something that they already use. You can white
Hmm.
label the jobs to be done thinking and bring it in without saying, hey, now you have to do jobs to be done. I agree, Wolfram. Oh, sorry, Elaine.
Oh, yeah, had a similar thought, kind of
Yeah.
stemming back to when we were discussing product-led growth, experience-led growth, customer-led growth. A lot of the power, in my experience with jobs to be done, is that it gives you the power, like you now can work on defining these terms internally. Like
Mhm.
even amongst this group, I'm sure talking about product-led growth has many different nuances and definitions. And I can remember doing a big presentation once on a design strategy that I had outlined. At the end of it, the product manager for the entire department said, well, what about our product strategy? And I said, I had never, ever, ever in any of the teams heard anybody reference product strategy. But you better believe I went to the next meeting with a product strategy that looked a lot like my design strategy.
Right. Yeah.
And now I don't know if I can ever say jobs to be done without thinking about what Ron just posted.
Right?
There you go. Yeah, nice one, Leon.
Yeah,
Yeah,
right.
right. I mean, yeah, if you can,
Yeah, I mean,
Yeah,
it's
let's go.
yeah, it is very much like what is it that our customers want to make easier? Like what are we helping them
right.
do less of?
Yeah,
Right?
and I love that curiosity angle too, and that's kind of what I meant, on the sticky note at the very top that I had, that jobs to be done makes customer centricity tangible. And
Mhm.
I find some people just aren't curious about their customers, right? And I think what jobs to be done does is it helps you be very curious about your customers. We had, what was it, almost 2 years ago, Elaine, now, David Duncan, who co-wrote the book Competing Against Luck with Clay Christensen. He was on the show here, and he wrote a book called The Secret Lives of People. Is that the name of Secret Live? What's the name of the book? Slipping me. But anyway, he wrote it as a detective story, right? So he said, we're doing, and it's a novel. It's literally a detective novel about being curious about your customers, right? And I think for me, that's one thing that I find lacking a lot is people, oh yeah, we did a very high level hand wavy marketing survey a year ago, and we know about no, you have to be like a detective and go out and constantly be querying your customers and being curious about them. And there it is, Secret Lives of Customers, right? I find that jobs to be done kind of leads you down that path and like sparks that kind of curiosity. So I'm glad you mentioned, being curious about your customers, because for me that's really what jobs to be done is about.
Yeah, there's another quote that I heard somewhere and I can't remember where I heard it, but I bring it up often is when I feel like we're getting kind of derailed, I come back to, are we talking about our customers like they are a means to our ends, or
Mhm.
are we a means to their ends? Like I think that's so important to think about because it's so easy for any of us to slip into that where it's like, well, if our customers could just do this, right? It's like, okay, but am I talking about it from a position of my customer being a means to my end, or am I trying to be a means to their end? Like, do I even know what their end is, or do I even care? And as soon as you start slipping away from that, that can be like a little bit of a flag, like an internal company flag to say, whoa, like, is this are we moving in the right direction, or does this feel like it's almost like when you're sailing and you start seeing the sail like luff, right? Like that's almost what you're looking for.
Yeah. Yeah, we got a lot of memes coming out here. I think, Elaine, we're going to have a whole bunch of social media campaigns with all these aphorisms that Ellie's putting out there. No, it's great, and I think everybody on the call is in agreement there. Jobs to be done is about a mindset shift, right, Elaine?
And I think that the sailing reference for luffing is interesting because what luffing tells you is where the edges are, where the edges of where you can sail. And that's a lot about what jobs to be done is. It's framing, where are the edges of the problem, what's in, what's out.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Elaine sails.
I
Elaine
sail.
lives on a sailboat.
Yeah. I'm like, let's run with this one.
Yes, I want to go sailing with Elaine.
I'm sailing.
Next one's gonna be jobs to be done for sailing.
Right.
Right. Next time.
That's
wait.
actually like my dream job is working for like an e-commerce marine supply business.
There you go.
I think there might be somebody out here in Seattle. I'm
Right,
gonna
yeah.
just go on a limb and say.
Yeah.
Probably. If anywhere, it would be Seattle.
Yeah.
That's great.
Yeah. All right.
Are there any other thoughts or questions, Elaine, in the chat?
Yes, Marianne had a question. Let's go back to that. I'm sorry.
Okay, great,
Marianne,
yeah.
do you want to come on the camera and ask your question, or not even on camera, just open up your audio? If not, that's fine.
That's a really good question.
Just let it pause for a moment and then we can speak it.
I was just curious, if you have a large organization as a CSM that you're responsible for, and they have various departments and groups that are using your software, and you're trying to determine, one group's adoption, whether or not they're healthy or not, and others, how you logistically catalog all that information with applications that you might have. So the jobs that they're doing in their respective groups, how you could track that individually, but rolling up to the entire organization. We
She mentions Gainsight as an
yeah, we have
example.
Gainsight right now, and we're struggling with trying to be able to manage that.
So if I'm understanding you correctly, Marianne, you've got a large organization, you've got a lot of different types of customers trying to do a lot of different things, and you are trying to build out the telemetry to better understand like what's going on in each of their worlds.
Yeah, and I think that different CSMs are on top of the different groups. It's just that sometimes rolling them up to the entire organization so that an executive would see that this part of one organization is doing well, another part is not doing so well. So we need to put more effort into adoption in that other area. And I think it may partially be the way we have our Gainsight set up, but I didn't know if other people had suggestions.
Yes, I would say it is likely the setup. However, I wouldn't go in and start mucking around with the setup just yet. I would start higher up. So the way that I would look at this is, if you've got a lot of different organizations and you've got the different leaders, I would task them with saying, okay, for each of your books of business, do you have a clear understanding of how you might break that down based off of, and I would look at this actually based off of revenue or based off of volume. There's two different ways I would start with that. Either based off of revenue, because you want to make sure that you're tracking your largest customers and not losing sight of what they're trying to do. Or I would look at it based off of largest volume, because that's where you're going to get the largest bang for your buck from a scale perspective when you're building out your telemetry from a volume perspective to help people track things better. Then I would say simplification is the key. I would give each leader, you have up to 5, maybe 7 buckets of things that you can put, like, this is the reason of why they're with us. You get up to 7. I don't care what you call the 7. I kind of care because it has to make sense. You can't call them like Lucky Charms because I don't know what that means. But, basically forcing them to prioritize and to create some sort of simplification so that it can't just go any which way. Because you need to be able to have your revenue operations team help you start building a view through this, but it is like it is something you want a partnership with your team, because they ideally would want to map this back to their sales team, to the marketing team, similar to the exercise I mentioned previously about it's not just this team that needs to use it. If they're confused, other teams are also likely confused too.
Definitely. Yeah, that's true.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
And
Sure.
you know, a lot of the activities, you know, that we talk about, because jobs to be done is obviously an analytic framework, but I think it comes with activities around prioritization. For instance, if you have a job map, where are we trying to move the needle in the customer's job, right? So that could be one of the, I'm just throwing this out there, Ellie, correct me if I'm wrong. That could be a team activity where you do to at least align around the customer job and then say, okay, what's the metric that will move that, right? And then put that into Gainsight. That wasn't that's not a playbook, Marianne, but I'm
Right.
just thinking about how we could actually operationalize some of the jobs to be done activities to work your way back into those 7 buckets or those 7 metrics, right?
Yeah, and if people are telling you, I don't have time to do this, or it's too whatever,
Yeah.
then take a pilot.
Hmm.
If they're recording their conversations in Gong, you can be able to pull the report in Gong, have Gong help you, be like, hey Gong, what are some of the common themes that are coming into this? Like
Right.
narrow it down to me, for the like the top 10, top 7, top 5, whatever. Like there's so many tools that are out there now that if people want to find a way, they will find a way. If they don't, they will find an excuse. And so you gotta hold them accountable.
Right. Hey, Ellie, about a year ago on this show, we had a Rob Dumbleton, who's a co-founder of a company called 44.ai, the word for and then the word for.ai. And what it is, it's a listening tool on top of Gong or Chorus AI, which listens to sales calls and customer success tools. And what it does is it listens for jobs to be done. So the output are
Oh.
actually job stories, right? That's what they're doing. So it's kind of a layer on top of that that is calibrated to listen for jobs to be done. And that might be something, I'm sure we'll see more of that type of thing, Marianne, right? Where you could be using those listening tools, but extracting the jobs to be done insights out of them, right?
So Jim, you said 4 and then 4. Is it FOR and then number 4?
No, it's FOR.ai. Yeah.
Ah, okay.
Yeah. And it's specifically made to integrate with sales and customer success call software like Gong and Chorus AI and those types of things.
Oh,
But
interesting.
it's calibrated to hear jobs to be done, which is like finding a needle in a haystack, right? Because most customer success calls and sales calls are going to be talking about metrics and dollars and technology
Mhm.
and things like that. But the customer will indicate within there what their underlying job is, right? And if you could extract that on an ongoing basis, for me, that's ongoing curiosity, right? We don't just want to know the top level metrics. We want to know what the job is customers are trying to get done. That's where their software is going. This isn't an endorsement for it, and I'm not selling it. Really nice guys. But I think those types of solutions, we're going to see more and more of those types of solutions. Yeah, check it out, Ellie.
Cool.
Let's see. Does Dom have a question?
Oh no, Dom is just pulling up the tool. Dom, have you
Okay.
used 4.4?
I've talked with Rob quite a bit.
Oh,
Yeah,
that's right. Yeah.
yeah. So when besides that, it's listening for jobs to be done, which is so valuable, is that it's listening across, so many listening posts. So a lot of times it's hard to dig into support calls and resolutions, and then your sales motions. But every time you're having some, sales presentation and what you're trying to do with the different customers, right? You're building all this data in your CRM database or somewhere else, but you have these databases and you aren't looking across them. So, it helps you find that resonance of jobs to be done coming up in different places with the interaction of the customers. Yeah.
Yeah. Curiosity at scale.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And, I don't know more about the implementation. I imagine it takes some, work to get it, put it in place with different tools. And
I was just coaching an organization in jobs to be done, and one of their tech guys actually built something similar bespoke. He took all the chorus calls and then extracted jobs to be done job stories out of it, Dom. It was pretty cool that he just kind of did that naturally. That's why I think we'll see more and more of that, right?
yeah.
Type of
Yeah,
meta
and I even found
extraction.
that, like just the way they log stuff, right? Support is always tallying,
Sure.
what are the things that are happening, right?
Yeah.
But when they're categorizing stuff differently or calling
Yeah.
it something different, interpreting it different, then you don't have that alignment, right? So that's where using jobs to be done, getting people focused on what is that job, getting alignment about those categories and the frameworks, that all goes a long way too.
Well, before people start going to build their own tools, it's always important to appreciate the security considerations of like sometimes it's just worth it to go and get the tool because it's already tested, especially with some of the conversations going on in an organization. It might be fun to vibe code or whatever you're trying to do just on some side projects, but also build versus buy. Sometimes it is much better and safer to just buy.
Mm-hmm. Great. Yeah.
Yeah, I did have another thought from a perspective of a quantitative researcher, decades of quantitative research, is just like in NPS, you figure out these top level metrics, or you have some metrics, customer satisfaction, product sat, ongoing use, likelihood to renew, all these things, right? That you have these outcomes. But more important than the metrics and tracking them is understanding why, what changes them. And that's what we're talking about here too, is that the understanding the jobs to be done, where do they get value? Why are they doing this? What is the customer's end that they're trying to achieve, the progress they're trying to make? Those should be the things that we use as the tests of, well, what are the things that will drive those outcomes? So, in a quantitative sense, it's a regression model, right? You're figuring out driver analysis of what are the things that are driving those outcomes. And once you start learning that more, I found it's easy to get executives to focus on those as the metrics instead of something nebulous about, well, is my NPS going up or down? And I need measured on that. No, understand your top 5 drivers. And then those are more tangible things that they could have a program to make progress in, see that progress, and trust that NPS, other things are going to move. You're going to drive your final outcomes.
Nice.
Wendy has a question. Wendy, would you like to come on up?
Yeah, thanks. I've been using Jobs to be Done for many years now, and I've found, and I'm a consultant, so I found it super useful in the discovery phase. Where I'm running into trouble, and Dominic kind of was answering a little bit of my question already with the metrics, but like once the implementation and the testing phases are underway, how I'm having trouble connecting back to the work that was done in Jobs to be Done because it goes right down a technical tunnel. And I've been trying to convince senior leaders that I work with at our customers to continuously refer back to this way of thinking. But it just once the CTO takes over, it's like full engineering ahead. So what can you what's your advice?
So there's different personas in any project. And so usually what I'll recommend is you're collecting the different job from the different personas. So the economic buyer, so whoever controls the budget, will have a different job or why in mind than the person who is driving the project. So as an example, the economic buyer may or may not care that this tool helps save their team 10 hours a week, because in their mind, they're like, if my team works an extra 10 hours, I'm paying them the same. So it may or may not matter to this person. And that, like I'm not making a moral call on like if that's a good thing or not, but legitimately that may not be why they renew the budget. They have a different job or why that they care about. And so it is tracking the different personas involved of like, what's their job? Their job may be a little bit different. And it could be they want to show, okay, if they're able to work 10 less hours, then they might be able to generate a new idea or a new product. And if I can release an additional product, then that's actually what they care about. So I need to be able to track that non-technical business impact. And that's kind of where you're drawing that back to be able to say, okay, what's that last square? Like, what's that impact that this person who controls the budget will actually care about? And so it may be the person who cares about the technical why controls the budget, or it may be two different people. And if it's two different people, then you want to be able to understand both of their jobs or the, you know, the things they care about.
Got it. Okay. Yeah, that's helpful. Thank you.
Yes.
Yeah,
And when I
thanks.
say they care about, it's to the point where, you know, as soon as they sign on the dotted line, they're already wondering, did I make the right call? And because they're you know, their reputation's attached to it. So whatever their reputation's attached to, that's what you want to make sure you're tracking against.
Any other questions? Any other tidbits there in the chat, Elaine?
No, not unless Ellie Hutton wants to come up. You've had a lot of great comments, Ellie. I've loved following your contributions to the chat. Is there anything that you want to weigh in on or emphasize, or any thoughts you want to share from today's conversation?
Ooh, yeah, this was awesome. I appreciate that this webinar was very interactive. It's very engaging. It's really helpful to learn from other people, especially to have the conversation across the whole business, because I think, to me, whatever you call it, whether you call it jobs to be done, whether you call it value, progress, like the customer's jobs that they need to do, alignment is so critical. And it does start with, you know, what you're building. Are you building a great product that actually solves a real problem? Are marketing and sales going out and dealing with that mission critical problem? Can customer success actually make everything work and move and build towards real value with the customer and real outcomes? If all of that is working smoothly and awesome, then your business is going to grow. But most companies don't get there. And it's these kinds of fundamental conversations about, like, what's the customer actually trying to achieve here? And are we actually helping them achieve that thing? And if they achieve that thing, what's the impact for that person, but also for their business? I think these fundamental conversations are so critical to alignment. And if more customers, more businesses got this right for their customer, there'll be a lot more successful companies out there. So I really appreciate Ellie coming forward and connecting the dots between the jobs to be done, this fundamental framework, and all the way up to what it means for board level as well.
Yeah.
So appreciate the conversation today.
Yeah, agree. Thanks for that, Ellie. And I've found focus on the customer is probably one of the most effective ways to align across different functions, right? Because if you say alignment around metrics, but if they're all coming with their different perspectives, you're always just going to have those territory wars, right? If you put the customer out there, it's like, you can't argue with that, right? We all serve the customer. So I find that jobs to be done has an aligning effect because it's so hyper focused on the customer, which is not neutral ground. It's common ground. Let's put it that way. So I love those thoughts, Ellie. Yeah. We're right up against the time here. Any final words
Ellie
from you,
Wu,
Ellie?
yeah. Thank you.
Yeah, great conversation. Thank you, everyone. And look forward to hearing more feedback as more folks check out the guide.
Yes,
All right.
absolutely. Ellie and Jim, thank you so much for
Yeah.
today. Ellie, it's been wonderful to work with you both on marketing for the guide and also to hear from you today and to have had you in class. Ellie is also a graduate of our Applying the Core Process class. Thank you so much for your contribution to this field. The guide is really an incredibly practical tool.
Yeah.
Thank you. Yeah, it's
Excellent.
been a joy. And
we'll be
yes,
back on October 28th with another Untangled. Look out for the guest. We haven't announced them yet. Thanks, Wolfram.
thank you all.
Camila,
care.
Marta, great seeing everybody. Thanks again, Ellie.